The invitation gleamed like a threat in Seraphina's calloused hands. Gold embossed, heavy as judgment, it bore her name written in Cassandra Vance's precise, mocking script. Miss Seraphina Cole, plus guest. The laugh that had accompanied its delivery still echoed in her mind. High, cruel, performative. Cassandra had presented it in the marble foyer, surrounded by her lunch circle of society wives, their diamond bracelets catching the chandelier light as they clutched their bellies in delight. I simply must have diversity at my gala, Cassandra had announced, her voice dripping with venom disguised as charity. And who better than our dear Seraphina? 3 years of loyal service deserves recognition, doesn't it, ladies? The women had howled. One had actually wiped tears from her eyes. Another had pulled out her phone, recording Seraphina's humiliation for their private group chat. But what none of them knew, what Cassandra couldn't possibly know, was that Seraphina had been waiting for exactly this moment. 3 years of scrubbing their toilets, serving their champagne, listening to their secrets. 3 years of documenting every crime, every confession, every careless word spoken in front of the help they'd trained themselves not to see. Now, alone in her basement studio apartment, Seraphina traced the embossed crest, the Vance family eagle, wings spread in dominion. My family's eagle, she thought, her jaw tightening. The invitation wasn't kindness. It was a bet. Cassandra had wagered $5,000 with her friends that the help wouldn't dare show her face. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this story, please hit that like button and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. And I'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop a comment below and let me know. Seraphina set the invitation on her dresser, next to the tarnished key she'd found wedged behind the study's baseboard 2 weeks ago. She knew exactly what lock it opened. She knew exactly what was hidden inside that wall safe. And she knew that what she'd found there was enough to destroy Cassandra's entire world if she played it right. If she didn't get killed first. Because that's what happened to people who threatened Cassandra Vance. Seraphina's parents had learned that lesson the hard way 20 years ago when their house burned with them inside it. She picked up her phone and scrolled to the photos she'd taken of the documents in the safe. Her father's handwriting stared back at her. The Vance estate loomed 3 nights later, ablaze with lights like a ship that didn't know it was already sinking. The hallway stretched like a golden throat, ready to swallow its guests whole. Crystal chandeliers dripped light across polished marble, and the air hummed with champagne bubbles and calculated laughter. Cassandra Vance stood at the center of it all, draped in ivory silk, holding court like the queen she believed herself to be. Every 5 minutes, she glanced toward the entrance, her smile sharpening each time the doors remained empty. "She's not coming," one of her friends whispered, disappointed. "Of course not," Cassandra purred, sipping her cristal. "I told you, these people know their place." She pulled out her phone, ready to text her group chat the punchline to the joke. "Guess who didn't show? I should have bet $10,000. Then the orchestra stuttered. Conversations died mid-sentence. Every head in the room turned as the grand doors opened, and Seraphina Cole stepped onto the red carpet. The dress was blood-red silk, cut like a promise and a thread, hugging curves that 3 years of uniform aprons had hidden. A diamond choker, her grandmother's, the one Cassandra thought had been sold to pay the estate debts, caught the light at her throat. Her hair, always tied back in submission, now cascaded in dark waves over bare shoulders. But it was her eyes that truly silenced the room. Calm, knowing, unafraid, and carrying a promise of violence. Cassandra's champagne flute froze halfway to her lips. Her mouth fell open, a perfect O of shock, as the woman she'd spent 3 years treating as furniture walked past her without so much as a glance. Every step a declaration that the rules of this game had just changed. But Seraphina saw something else in Cassandra's face. A flash of recognition, then calculation, then something that looked like panic. Because Cassandra was smart enough to know that people didn't transform overnight without a reason. And the reason was walking toward her in diamonds that shouldn't exist. As Seraphina passed, she leaned in just close enough for Cassandra to hear, her voice silk over steel. "We need to talk about my parents. And the fire. And what you did." Cassandra's face went white as bone. The help hadn't just shown up. She'd shown up like a goddess with a guillotine. And everyone was about to learn that when you invite a storm into your house as a joke, you shouldn't be surprised when it burns everything down. The study had never seemed sinister before. Just another room to vacuum. Another space where Cassandra conducted her endless phone calls about charity events and investment portfolios. But on that Tuesday 3 weeks before the invitation, as Seraphina's vacuum caught the baseboard near the mahogany desk, everything changed. The panel shifted with a soft click that didn't belong in the symphony of cleaning sounds she'd memorized over 3 years. Her hand stilled on the vacuum handle. She glanced at the study door. Closed. Cassandra upstairs. The house quiet except for the distant sound of the gardener's mower outside. Seraphina knelt and pressed her fingers against the panel. It swung inward, revealing a cavity the size of a shoebox. Inside, wrapped in oilcloth gone brown with age, was a brass key. Her grandmother's voice surfaced from a 20-year-old memory. The Vance men always kept 2 safes, baby girl. One for show, one for truth. The key was still warm in her palm, as if it had been waiting. Engraved along the shaft were 3 letters. JVC. Jonathan Vance Cole. Her father. That night, after Cassandra's dinner guests had left, Seraphina returned to the study. Her hands shook as she searched the walls, pressing along seams in the wallpaper, feeling for the mechanism her child's memory had forgotten. Behind Cassandra's late husband's portrait, she found it. The nearly invisible vertical seam. The panel opened silently. The wall safe gleamed in her flashlight beam. The key turned like a whisper. And inside was her father's careful handwriting documenting 20 years of theft. The original will naming Seraphina as sole heir. Bank transfers showing systematic looting of the Vance fortune. And a letter that made her blood run cold. Cassandra and Thomas threatened me today. They said if I go to the authorities about the embezzlement, they'll make sure there are no heirs to contest anything. Elizabeth is worried. I've told her to take Seraphina to her mother's this weekend, but Cassandra's watching us too closely. Thomas has him on payroll. But it won't be. Protect my daughter. Make them pay. Seraphina's phone trembled as she photographed every page, the flash illuminating the proof that her parents had been murdered. Not killed in an accident. Murdered. For money. By the woman whose toilet Seraphina had been scrubbing for 3 years. She was closing the safe when she heard it. Footsteps in the hallway. Heavy. Male. Not Cassandra's designer heels. The vacuum was still running in the corner, providing cover, but Seraphina's heart hammered as she swung the panel closed and pocketed the key. The portrait settled back into place just as the door opened. Thomas Vance Jr., Cassandra's stepson, who was supposed to be in New York, stood in the doorway. His eyes swept the room, lingering on Seraphina kneeling by the wall, before moving to the vacuum. Working late, he observed. Not a question. Mrs. Vance wants everything perfect for the gala. Seraphina kept her voice steady, subservient, her eyes lowered like the good maid she'd spent 3 years pretending to be. Of course she does. Thomas stepped into the room, and Seraphina's skin crawled. He'd always looked at her wrong. Lingering glances, comments that skirted the edge of appropriate. You know, you clean this room more than any other. 3, 4 times a week. What's so special about my father's study? Mrs. Vance's instructions, Seraphina said, standing slowly, positioning the vacuum between them like a shield. Thomas moved closer, backing her toward the wall where the safe was hidden. My father used to say this room had secrets. Family secrets. You ever find anything interesting while you're cleaning? Her phone was in her pocket, heavy with evidence that could get her killed. The key was in her other pocket, warm against her hip. And Thomas was close enough now that she could smell his cologne, the same brand his father had worn, according to Cassandra's nostalgic dinner party stories. Just dust, Seraphina said. And your stepmother's phone calls. She talks loud when she thinks no one's listening. It was a calculated risk, a reminder that the invisible Maid heard everything. Thomas's eyes narrowed. What does she talk about? Charity work, mostly. Boring stuff. Seraphina moved to collect the vacuum cord, creating distance. I should finish upstairs. Mrs. Vance wants. My stepmother is a liar and a thief, Thomas said abruptly. And you're not really a maid, are you? You've been here 3 years. Same apartment in the city. No family. No friends. Just watching. Listening. I've been trying to figure out what you want. Seraphina's blood turned to ice. I don't know what you. You look like someone, Thomas continued, pulling out his phone. He scrolled to a photo. A family portrait from 20 years ago. The Vance Cole family at a charity event. Seraphina's parents. And her, age 8, wearing her grandmother's pearls. You look like Elizabeth Cole, Thomas said, watching her face. Jonathan's wife. I was 16 when they died. I remember the funeral. I remember Cassandra crying crocodile tears while my father made sure their orphan daughter got shuffled off to social services before she could contest anything. The world tilted. You knew? I've always known. Thomas pocketed his phone. My father was a bastard, but Cassandra made him worse. Or maybe she made him possible. After Jonathan died, she turned my father into her weapon. And when I tried to expose them, she threatened to have me declared incompetent and strip my inheritance. He laughed bitterly. So I've been waiting, watching, wondering if anyone would ever have the guts to challenge her. Why are you telling me this? Because you found the safe, Thomas said simply. I saw you close it. And because that gala invitation she gave you? It's not just a joke. She's planning something. She knows who you are, Seraphina. She's always known. And she's setting a trap. The floor seemed to drop away. What kind of trap? I don't know yet. But I know my stepmother. She doesn't humiliate people just for fun. She humiliates them right before she destroys them completely. He moved toward the door, then paused. Be careful at that gala. And whatever you're planning, whatever evidence you think you have, make sure it's airtight. Because Cassandra doesn't just bury her enemies. She erases them. After he left, Seraphina sank into her father's old desk chair, her entire body shaking. The documents in the safe weren't just evidence. They were a death sentence if Cassandra knew she'd found them. And Thomas's warning echoed in her mind. She's setting a trap. But what Cassandra didn't know, what she couldn't possibly know, was that Seraphina had been setting her own trap for 3 years. Documenting every crime. Recording every phone call. Building a case so airtight that even Cassandra's bought and paid for police chief wouldn't be able to bury it. The gala would be her move. But she needed insurance. She needed someone she could trust with the evidence if something happened to her. Seraphina pulled out her phone and scrolled to a name she hadn't called in 20 years. Marcus Chun, the estate gardener's son, now an investigative journalist who'd built his career exposing corrupt elites. The message was simple. Remember Seraphina Cole? I'm alive. I have proof my parents were murdered. And I need your help before Cassandra Vance kills me too. His response came within seconds. Holy shit. Where are you? Are you safe? She typed back. For now. But I'm about to do something stupid. If I don't contact you within 72 hours, publish everything I'm about to send you. Then she uploaded every photo from the safe, every recording from 3 years of careful documentation, every piece of evidence that proved Cassandra Vance was a murderer and a thief. The trap was set. The question was, who would spring it first? The box sat in Seraphina's closet like a time bomb. She'd carried it through foster homes and studio apartments for 20 years, never opening it, never quite able to throw it away. Now she pulled it out, dust coating her fingers as she lifted the lid. Her grandmother's jewelry glowed in the lamplight. The diamond choker, the Cartier earrings, the vintage bracelet that predated the mansion itself. Worth a fortune, but more importantly, worth a statement. I am who you tried to erase. The dress came next. Blood-red silk that moved like water, purchased 2 months ago with money she'd saved from 3 years of minimum wage labor. She'd known, even then, that she would need armor for the war she was planning. But as she laid everything across her narrow bed, her phone buzzed with a message that made her stomach drop. Unknown number. Curious choice. Wearing your grandmother's jewelry to the gala. I thought we sold all of that to pay the estate debts. Where did you really find it, Seraphina? Or should I call you by your real name now? Her blood turned to ice. Cassandra knew, had always known. Before she could respond, another message. Come early. 7 p.m., before the other guests. We should talk privately. Or I could call the police about the items you've stolen from my safe. Your choice. A third message, this one with an attachment. Security camera footage from the study, showing Seraphina kneeling by the wall, the panel open, her hand reaching into the safe. 7 p.m. Don't be late. Seraphina's hands shook as she stared at the footage. Cassandra had cameras in the study. Of course she did. Which meant she'd watched Seraphina find the safe. Watched her photograph the documents. And she'd said nothing for 3 weeks, letting Seraphina think she'd been clever, letting her plan her grand confrontation. While Cassandra planned something worse. Her phone rang. Marcus. Don't go, he said immediately. I got your files. This woman is connected to everyone. The police chief, the district attorney, half the judges in the county. If you walk into that house early, alone, you might not walk out. She has footage of me accessing her safe, Seraphina said, her voice hollow. She's threatening to have me arrested for theft. If I don't show up, she'll destroy me before I can expose her. Then we go public now. I can have the story published in an hour. No, Seraphina cut him off. If you publish now, with just my word and some documents, her lawyers will bury it in lawsuits before anyone reads past the headline. We need more. We need her confession. We need her to incriminate herself where witnesses can hear. So what's your plan? Seraphina looked at the red dress, the diamonds, the armor she'd prepared. I'm going to give her what she wants. A private conversation. But I'm not going alone. She paused. How fast can you get to the estate? 30 minutes. Bring cameras. The small ones. Body cams, hidden mics, anything that can record without being obvious. And bring Margaret Sutherland, the attorney who does pro bono work for victims' families. Seraphina, this is insane. My parents died because they trusted the system to protect them, she said. I'm not making that mistake. Either I get Cassandra's confession tonight, or I end up like them. But at least this time, there will be evidence. After she hung up, Seraphina opened her email and composed a message to be sent automatically if she didn't cancel it by midnight. To whom it may concern. If you're reading this, I'm dead. Cassandra Vance has murdered me, just like she murdered my parents 20 years ago. Attached is all the evidence. Don't let her bury another body. Don't let her erase another name. Make her pay. Signed, Seraphina Vance Cole. The recipient list included every major news outlet, the FBI, the State Attorney General, and Marcus's entire media network. Dead Woman's Switch. The oldest insurance policy in the world. She dressed slowly, each piece of jewelry a link in the armor she was building. The choker at her throat felt like her grandmother's hands, steadying her. The dress felt like her mother's courage. The bracelet felt like her father's determination. By the time Marcus and Margaret arrived at her apartment, she was ready. Jesus, Margaret breathed, seeing her. You look like you're going to war. I am, Seraphina said simply. She turned so they could attach the body camera to the back of her dress, hidden in the fabric. Another mic went in her clutch. A third tucked into her hair. If this goes wrong, Margaret said, if she tries anything, we call the police immediately. The police chief is on her payroll, Seraphina reminded her. If this goes wrong, you publish everything Marcus has. And you sue her for wrongful death on my behalf. Make sure everyone knows what she did. You're talking like you're going to die, Marcus said, his voice tight. I'm talking like I'm prepared for all outcomes. Seraphina checked her phone. 6:45 p.m. I need to go. She'll be watching to see if I arrive alone. We'll be parked at the service entrance, Margaret said. If you don't text us every 15 minutes, we're coming in. Seraphina nodded, then impulsively hugged them both. Thank you. For believing me. For helping me. For making sure she can't erase me like she erased my parents. The limousine felt like a funeral car as it carried her toward the estate. Through the tinted windows, she watched the city give way to the manicured lawns of the wealthy, each mansion a fortress of privilege and secrets. The Vance estate loomed ahead, ablaze with lights, empty of guests, waiting like a trap. Seraphina took a breath, touched the choker at her throat, and whispered to the grandmother who couldn't hear her. I'm not afraid. Not anymore. But as the car stopped and the driver opened her door, she saw Cassandra standing in the foyer, smiling. And beside her stood two security guards Seraphina had never seen before. Men who looked like they knew how to make bodies disappear. Cassandra's voice carried across the driveway, sweet as poisoned honey. Welcome home, Seraphina. We have so much to discuss. About your parents. And how accidents happen to people who threaten me. Seraphina stepped out of the car, the red dress catching the lights like blood, and walked toward the woman who'd murdered her family. Toward justice or death. The cameras were rolling. The insurance was in place. Now all she had to do was survive the next hour. Mrs. Vance was just explaining how she planned to have me institutionalized to discredit my evidence, Seraphina said clearly, for the cameras, for the recording, for the history that was finally being written correctly. She also confirmed that she knew about my father's accusations of embezzlement before his death. And she admitted to installing security cameras to monitor my discovery of the hidden safe containing evidence she's been concealing for 20 years. That's not what Cassandra started, but Rodriguez held up a hand. Ma'am, I'm going to advise you to stop talking and call your attorney. He turned to the security guards. You too. Names and employment records. Now. As the situation spiraled out of Cassandra's control, the front doors opened again, this time admitting the first wave of gala guests, dressed in designer gowns and tuxedos, drawn by the commotion. And then the orchestra that had been setting up in the ballroom spilled into the foyer, confused by the raised voices. And then the catering staff, an audience, dozens of witnesses, all of them watching as Cassandra Vance's carefully constructed empire began to crack. Seraphina walked to the center of the foyer, in her house, and raised her voice so everyone could hear. My name is Seraphina Vance Cole. 20 years ago, Cassandra Vance and her husband murdered my parents so they could steal my inheritance. For 3 years, I've been working as a maid in my own home, documenting their crimes. Tonight, I'm taking back what's mine. The murmuring crowd fell silent. Camera phones appeared, capturing everything. And Cassandra, trapped by witnesses and legal orders and her own arrogant assumption that she could control the narrative, could only watch as the invisible Maid became the story everyone would be talking about. But then Cassandra smiled. A terrible, knowing smile that sent ice through Seraphina's veins. You clever girl, Cassandra said softly. You think you've won. But you have no idea what I'm capable of when I'm cornered. She pulled out her phone and made a call, her eyes never leaving Seraphina's face. It's me. Burn it. Everything. The company records, the offshore accounts, all of it. Burn it now. And as flames began to glow in the windows of the estate's east wing, where all of Vance Industries' physical records were stored, Seraphina realized the war had just begun. But what happens next will shock you even more. Make sure you're subscribed because Chapter 4 is where everything explodes, and you won't believe what Cassandra does when she's truly cornered. Trust me, you don't want to miss this.